So this is the cost influence curve. He talked about, high impact, low cost, what points of the project make sense for design ideas, whether it be solicited or unsolicited. This is what I use when I talk to owners. He did a great job of talking to us as PSPs. Interesting, PSPs. When I talk to an owner, I'm telling them their ability to manage and control and impact the cost of their job or their project diminishes over the life of that job. So obviously, in the same vein, certain activities that must be engaged in, not on the VE side, but just planning and developing scope, you must do it early. Otherwise, what you end up with is sometimes a hodgepodge and change orders in the field. So in construction, we're either planning to build something or we're building something. That's just it. It happens in one of those two segments. I believe when we're engaging in whether we're in pursuit mode, opportunity prep mode, bidding, whatever part of the process, I believe that success is a choice. And I read at one point, the gentleman said success in his mind was when preparation meets opportunity. I don't think the industry is short of opportunity at this particular juncture. I think we've seen some very good growth over the last few years. But whether or not we're prepared for that opportunity, that's the question. That's the variable, not whether or not there's opportunity. Your success on any opportunity is directly connected to your ability to prepare for that individual challenge. So I always ask you, what are you doing right now to prepare for the current opportunity or the next opportunity? Do you spend 8 hours a day putting out fires? Take your day and split it up. Just randomly pick a day, and how is my day broken up? How much time am I spending communicating with clients, potential clients, existing clients, staff, etc., authorities having jurisdiction, whatever. How are you doing that? How are you being effective in preparation? So you can't be successful without setting it up. So this is sort of Marvin's version of what I call the setup, right? Making sure you've got some processes in place that you know how to communicate effectively, verbally and in writing. They say 80% of our communication is body language. So when you're in front of those folks, make sure that you understand how to communicate, even when it's fun and when it's not fun, because sometimes our communication, we're talking scope, we're talking what's in and what's out, what you assumed, what you didn't assume, what they were very clear about and what they were ambiguous about. And at the end of the day, to avoid a misunderstanding, always get an understanding. Accountability, you are accountable for what you do within your firm and outside of your firm, and be responsive. One of the things that I love to hear that's said about me is that he's responsive. Now everybody might not say that, but I think for the most part, you send me an email, you will get a response. You will get a response, right? I called you from Chuck E. Cheese one time. Well, I was there with the grandbabies there, but so I try to be responsive. So Steve hit that very nicely. These are good, particularly for those of us who may not engage on a regular basis in the pre-construction process. This is going to be some good information for you to reach back in the event you are sitting in a meeting and they're talking about some pre-construction activities and elements. Pull this out. So when they start talking about scheduling, well, that's a general word. But when they say, well, the detailed schedule versus a summary, there's float in it. Well, what's float? And you got predecessor relationship and successor. I didn't really get into all that, but this is to help those of us who may not engage in these things every day, just as a checklist. I heard of that. Marvin mentioned that. Before that, Steve didn't hit on this, but this last point, team and performance management. I put that last because you can go through every activity in pre-construction, right? All the massing and stacking design, making sure your site orientation is right. But if you don't have a process where you manage team in their performance, I venture to say I could probably predict the outcome of your project. Partnering success for collaborative buy-in. That's with everybody, And anyone that's in this room that have worked a project with me, and I don't know, Philip might be the only one in here right now that was at that particular level. He knows that collaboration has to be there. Establish OAC meetings. That's owner, architect, contractor, another acronym. Controlling the scope so that you don't have to creep, right, with your A, E, and C. And recover mechanism to address it. And this is from an owner thing. Do I need to, recover cost or things like that during the planning that will impact me during construction? Ineffective design or design assist. A lot of people don't like to use that word, design assist process. Underperforming team or leadership. That is the last one, and that is really one of the more important ones. How do you deal with underperforming team? For you, your team that works within your firm. How do you deal with people that are underperforming, right? Are you politically correct because you really haven't even established goals and performance factors or indicators for them? So you don't really know anyway. So you need to do that. Learning outcome, assessment analysis. I'm rolling right now, guys. I'm rolling. Don't disturb me. I'm on cruise control. Determining strategies for your business pursuits. We're talking about the pursuits. Opportunity model. First of all, do you have a model? Do you know what your model is? If someone said, I have a project that's senior living, and you say, oh, I want to bid that. Does something like that even fit within the model of your company? Do you have experience? Does the opportunity fit your core competency, right? What's your market position? You don't have vendor relationships. You really can't buy materials, rent equipment. So how does that opportunity even fit within your own market position? Why is this attractive to your firm? Ask those questions. Get your team together. Is this the correct market for us? What's the growth impact? Is there one? If it is, how do you know that it is? Relationship opportunity. Or is this one of those one and done? We've heard that. One and dones are not bad. Relationships are great. I've done the one and done. You got one project, I'll do it. And I'll maintain a relationship just in case 10 years down the road, there's another one. Can we be competitive? There we go back with knowing what our costs, knowing what our markup needs to be, and is that competitive? What type of solicitation is it that we are evaluating? Is it qualification-based? Is it cost-based? Is it low bid? Public, private? Is it a select bidders or proposers list in case of professional services? Proposers list. Is it a negotiated relationship? Did it come off a cold call or a referral? All those things go into how you actually pursue it. You have to know all of these things. So it's more than just, let's get the drawings and start putting a number together. As we look at our business, I meet with people regularly that talk about, that say things like, I'm not really sure if this particular owner relationship is working. I don't get any work out of it. I'm not hearing anything. There's no activity. How many times have I talked to this group about knowing what the greater market is for you versus just the St. Louis metropolitan area? This St. Louis metropolitan area probably has a construction in place volume of about $4 billion. That seems like that's a lot. I thought I'd take a step back and share with you, because I think we need to really understand, because we are in the industry. We're not just in St. Louis, we're in the industry. The U.S. Census Bureau, according to my research, in 2012, the construction put in place in the U.S. is $883 billion. Pardon me? All construction. I got a breakdown coming up on the next one. So in 13, $930 billion. So as you can see, things are getting better. Then to 14, they clocked $972 billion in place. Now, I didn't say, I can assume that excludes design and maybe even owner rep or PMO. So it didn't. It said work in place. So that's brick and mortar to me. But in 2015, they estimate already that our U.S. construction work in place will be $1.1 trillion. So while we look at the St. Louis metropolitan area and we say, it's just not happening for me, it's not, I contend, again, I will say this, regardless of the size of your firm, regardless, that until you get to a point where you can expand your mind outside of this St. Louis metropolitan market, in October it will be 29 years for me in this industry. And I keep seeing the same cycle. I'm not seeing firms growing and really branching out. The ones that have left St. Louis or expanded outside of St. Louis, those are the ones that I have seen really expand capabilities and staff and get on projects that they never would have been on in St. Louis. Let's not fool ourselves, people. There is opportunity outside of St. Louis where people will give you that opportunity. Even though you may be small, a little less experienced, they may be willing to be more open to certain types of partnerships that may not be available here in St. Louis. So just understand, this is just to help you think hopefully a little bit more broad about the industry at large, that there is so much opportunity out there. That's why I said there's no shortage of opportunity, and that's true. There is no shortage. The variance is, what are we doing to prepare? Had breakfast yesterday morning with Stan, Web Engineering, and we were chatting about getting outside of St. Louis, right? And his first concern was, it costs money to do that. You're exactly right, it costs money. But there are ways that you can start initiating things outside of St. Louis without going and opening an office. I don't say go open an office, that wouldn't be smart. But there's certain networking opportunities and connections that you can make outside of. Sometimes it's just finding out where a specific event, whether it be a minority business event or some other type of industry event, CMAA, ASHE, AGC, they have national conventions and conferences, and for the mere cost of $1,000, maybe $2,000, you can get yourself in front of a couple of thousand people where you're meeting and you're connecting with folks from around the country. To me, that's where something like that starts. So yes, there is a small investment in that, but it's not the investment of going and opening an office where everything's on the if-come. I gave Stan the example years ago when I opened an office in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I walked into the mayor's office and did a presentation, and they had 4 solicitations on the street for an owner's rep. And I think they closed them within a week of the time I was going to be there. The director of public works walked in and he said, we got 4 RFPs on the street. I'm going to hold all 4 of them open. How soon could you get a proposal? Give me a few weeks. Got a proposal on all 4 of them, got all 4 of them. But it was my connection with the lawyers in Atlanta who knew the mayor's office in Chattanooga, which got me to a meeting. It only cost me the drive to get there. So again, let's not say what we can't do. Let's find ways to expand our mind and expand what we're doing, okay? So this is sort of a breakdown of work put in place. So we're here mainly because of the healthcare. But I wanted to make sure that you understood healthcare only represented a small portion of this. If you can see this, you guys can see that. Healthcare looks like for $43 billion of the non-residential buildings of $400 billion. So you don't have to say that, or you don't have to feel like, because you don't have a certain subject matter expertise in healthcare, and so now, woe is you. Well, look at all of these other industries within our industry that we can pursue and pursue subject matter expertise within. So again, that takes away any thought of what we can't do or what's not there in terms of opportunity. The relationship piece is the most important word and statement that I think has been resonated here today. As I've always said to you, I consider myself an expert relationship builder. And if you do that, whether you're an MBE or WBE or no BE, the relationships and what's your reputation. I have a consultant practice that I decided that I didn't want to go and apply for MBE status. It doesn't make the status less valued or anything like that. It just says that I believe that I reached a point where you either going to engage me or work with me because of my reputation, or you have the option to go elsewhere and buy services as an advisor or an auditor someplace else. That's the free world. Just like I have the option not to pursue you. Steve asked the question, how many have fired a client? I raised my hand because I have fired several. Now early on, sometimes, you have to develop your mind to a point where you can evaluate whether or not that client really can do anything in your best interest. And throwing numbers out on the street in terms of, what they're doing and all, that doesn't benefit you. If they're not willing to sit and meet with you and understand what your strengths and capabilities are, and to even entertain the thought of smaller packages or smaller projects that might fit and align with your expertise, why are you talking to him? He said some things that I've said 50 times. Well, why you bid they work? Well, they have a lot of work. I don't like to use the word stupid, but I hear that a lot. So I don't want us to be in that group. So this helps you understand all the work that is around and inside the U.S. in terms of what we all are part of. But sometimes we do only think about what's happening within our backyard. Strategy, evidence-based position. Just knowing that and making sure you have a strategy, purpose and objectives, intelligence and data gathering. Do you do any of that as you evaluate your business pursuits, primary, secondary resources? Do you analyze and interpret the data in any way, shape, or form? Because that is what gets you to those value-based decisions. Not a decision that just says, we need a job in 30 days because this one is going to be done. So it really doesn't matter what type of job this is, we need it. Now, I'm gonna say again, I do understand the survival aspect of that. That many of us are in situations where just Friday payroll can be an issue. So I understand that.
Don't bring up payroll.
Don't bring up payroll? Because tomorrow's Friday? Is that? Tomorrow's Friday, right? So we might not want to talk about that. But I will tell you that I have been in the position, or I stayed up all night Thursday, walking the floor at home, because I knew I had to give those paychecks out on Friday, and the money was not there to cover it. I've been there. I was having breakfast with a guy one time, and he wanted my help, just some advice. But he was being very evasive. I was just trying to help him and get some information and help him with some strategy and call the bank and say this and do this. And he said, I really don't want to, and I don't want to divulge all of that. And I said, his name was, I forget his name, but I said, I already know. I said, I already know what you're dealing with, everything. And he said, how do you know? I said, because I can read it on your face. I can read it on you. You don't have money for payroll, right? There's some things happening that's not in your control. You need a miracle in 30 days. You need a miracle in 60. I've been there, so at least let someone that has been there, and went through everything from one bankruptcy to 2 bankruptcies. I've been through I lost a business, a very successful business, but I lost it. And part of the reason was I wasn't as educated about the industry as I should have been at that time. But I can tell you that now. I couldn't tell you that then because I wasn't really smart enough to acknowledge it and say it. I thought I was the best project manager God had created on this earth, but I wasn't. So let me just say, be open, ask for help when you need help, but understand that you have to have some evidence when you're looking at your business pursuits. Make sure you got a strategy. Do you need a partner? I don't know. Do you need a partner? If so, if you don't know how to pick one, you better call me, because if you pick the wrong one, God forbid, if you pick the wrong one, and I'm not talking about the one that shows up to just sit. Let us help you grow. Let us be strategic with you, and that, all the buzzwords that we've heard for years, and all I have to do is ask. So you've been partnered with them for how long? How much money have you made? Have you grown? Have you hired anybody as a result of that? Do you get a fee when you're working with them? Do they get it all? Under the auspices of, we're helping you grow. We're going to train your people. We're going to train your people how to read drawings. So know what a partnership is, right? And how to approach it, whether it's design or construction, CM, GC, or at the prime level. Understand, I'm always open to help with those things. I've worked with so many companies, I can tell you this has been my experience. And I'm not going to be politically correct, I'm going to tell you, but you have to make the decision, right? Competition and positioning. Know who you're competing against, right? It's also sometimes good to know what their strengths and weaknesses are, because you need to know yours first. Now, I asked a question before about knowing what you need to be profitable, scope and fees, but make sure that that's reasonable. You're not going to make up for 6 months of losses on one job. You know what I mean? It's you got to start from that point. If you had losses, why did you have losses? Who was managing your work? Determine your break point in negotiation. Sometimes you're negotiating pre and post bid. Sometimes it's a partnering session. And I'm not telling you to be inflexible whatsoever. I'm just saying know what your break point is when they're saying, we need you to take this for this, and we're going to make it up on the next one. How many know that's the biggest? I'm not going to even finish that sentence. You know what I mean? How about you work with us on this one, and we promise we're gonna make it up on this one, because this one's bigger, and they don't even know that they have the job yet, right? So stop with the fig leaves, pull the onion back, right? What are you really dealing with? Know that. That's your responsibility to know that. It's not their responsibility to show you themselves. It's your responsibility to know that. Overcoming the fear factor. This is a good one. Some of us have fear. If there's no enemy within, the enemy outside can do you no harm. You've heard me say that. I know you have. I've been saying it for years, right? And I say that because I used to be afraid. I was intimidated to go in and talk to the banker, to go in there and talk to Albarisi or McCarthy or any of those guys. But it took a while, to working on yourself and re-educating yourself and doing all those things that are part of self-development. And once that fear is gone, then you could go and talk to anybody. You can sell them give them your elevator speech and be very confident. I talk to people all the time, and they'll say, man, you either love what you're doing or somebody really paying you well, because you when you're talking, I can feel it, I can see it. I said, well, two things. I love what I'm doing, and I do get paid well. Overcoming the fear factor. Failure, success. I don't know what I was saying on this one. Failure, I'm just going to take failure, success, or the unknown. Maybe I missed a word there. Fear is just a feeling. It's like happiness and joy and hunger. Fear has the power and the strength. It only has the power and the strength that we choose to give it, right? So it's natural to be nervous. It's natural to have anxiety. You know what I mean? When I was in San Antonio and I got up, putting my things on the podium, and I looked up, and there was 480 people in the room, and I'm panning like this. It was at that instant, and I'm generally not a nervous person at all, generally not. But, when I looked up, it was okay, but preparation, right? Preparation, it overcomes the nervousness. Recognize that What your fear does to you, what you need to do is convert that negative energy from fear to motivation, perseverance, and audacity. Overcoming the fear factor. Trust your own abilities. Know that you have the skill. Know that you have the talent. And don't necessarily listen to others who may not necessarily believe that you have it. Because what I've found is you have to be careful who and how you share your dreams and your ambitions. Because some people, they can't see it for themselves, so they can't see it for you. And there are people who, contrary to their body language, they may not have the interest in your success as you do. So you have to make sure that you have it here, even if you don't get all of the support you think you need to get from the outside. That's really on you. It's not up to anybody else. I tell people, when people think about you and your business, right, and your goals and ambitions, it's none of your business. It's really none of your business. Fear tries to convince us that we cannot achieve our goals or handle what life has in front of us. That's sort of why it's there, right? Make sure you're taking action outside of your comfort zone. Stay outside your comfort zone. That's okay. And this, I'm not going to read this, but the last paragraph, this gentleman from the University of Maryland, economist, he said, studies show that a decline of risk takers has mirrored the slowing rather than the growing of the U.S. economy. He says, what that tells me is that it is practically your mandate as an American to take the risks that move this great nation forward. So we're destined to be risk takers. It's nothing wrong with being a risk taker. Just understand how to evaluate it, manage it, protect the things that you need to protect, understand the things that are at risk. If you end up with a loss situation, you understood that going in, right? So survival in business is like life in the wild, that whole risk thing. You guys have heard me say before, every morning in Africa, that lion wakes up and he must run faster than the gazelle. He's going to starve to death. Same morning, the gazelle wakes up, he must run faster than the lion or he will be eaten. Same risk, right? The moral of it is that it doesn't matter if you're a lion or a gazelle, when the sun rises tomorrow morning, you better be running. I told this story a few years ago and I ran into a person that heard it and I said, how you doing? She said, I'm still running. He said, I'm still running. Great. So it's always nice to impart some of that. We had our break. Y'all don't want another break, do you? Learning outcome number 2, establishing the competitive position. Home stretch, risk assessment. You heard me talk about that. Not the same kind of risk assessment, not the same type of risk assessment on the construction end before you start a project inside of a hospital. That's a completely different risk assessment with interim life safety measures and all those things you have to deal with as part of that risk assessment. Everybody signs off on it, and then you're allowed to start work. Experience. To talk about, and I hit most of this already, so I'm not going to hit that again. What's your risk appetite? What is your risk appetite? I asked that question before. Can your company leadership manage the work? Can your company, why do you ask that question? I don't want to have any business or provide any services, and I have staff to do that, to do certain things that I can't do. Things happen. Right? If all you do is this and something happens and the client still expects the services to be provided or something to be managed and just to get to the end, but you're not a good manager. Quick story. Years ago, 90s, I had 2 project managers working for me. That's all I had at that time, 2. One of them was, he found himself in an insubordinate situation with me. And I decided that our relationship needed to end. Interesting enough, he went to the other project manager, because they were friends. I didn't know. They were friends. They were both managing work, doing a great job for me, and told him that I'm getting ready to lose my employment. with M.L. Johnson. And the next morning, they both came to me. Both of them. Both of them handed me a letter. Said, he's gone, so I'm gone. I said, okay, I accept both of your resignations. And then the one said, how you gonna manage the work? I mean, you don't have a project manager. And the only answer I can give him was, well, who do you think started it? And I finished the projects. I said that to say, never put yourself in a position where something happens and you can't take it and finish it and run with it, manage the relationship with the client. You don't know what's going on from a dollars and cents standpoint, where the buyout is, where the savings, where the deltas are, what's been done with the deltas. Cash flow cycle, know that. Cash flow, we need cash, right? We need, what's our cash flow cycle? Is it 30 days, 15 days? And how are you communicating that up front? You know, I was never bashful in asking for special compensation, if you will, not elevated compensation, but special compensation terms, so that I could manage my cash flow cycle. And I was a prime. I was a prime for WashU, for Snooks. You know, I did some partnering, but I was prime. And they would pay us because we met up front and we said, these are some of the issues we face, and this would help us if we're able to. I don't remember one time that we didn't get it. Now, you can't post-contract, then you tell them, I mean, we didn't need to get paid every week. And so I don't really agree with that. I think some people are in those situations, but you do what you have to do, right? Marginal fees, make sure your fees are competitive. Scope you do not control. You know what you can't control. And what questions you need to be asking so that the scope and the part of the work that you don't control doesn't impact you adversely. Make sure you understand what the flow down provisions are for your up tier in the contracts that they have, whether it be with the owner or with the CM. You have a right to ask that question. You get a subcontract, it has all these different provisions in there about what either what the owner or what the CM or the first tier prime assumes you should know. Ask for a copy of their contract. And they can black out the name and numbers, but what you want are the provisions. Risk assessment done well. I'm gonna let you guys read that. That just sort of helps you understand when it goes well in terms of risk assessment about your business and opportunity. Here's some of the things that you need to be asking yourself. And make sure that you answer. Don't just ask, but answer, right? In terms of down here, do we have the proper oversight on the risk? I got a 1 minute video. Can you pull this up real quick? This was, I'm not gonna do the other one, but this one's only about 60 seconds because we were talking about risk, and I think Steve mentioned risk, and I want to show you this real quick.
What's the difference between hazard and risk? We'll be exploring this more when Risk Bites launches fully in November, but until then, here's a quick taster. When it comes to health, hazard is the possibility of something causing harm, while risk is the probability of harm occurring. Take a bottle of bleach. There's always the possibility of someone doing something stupid with it. But until they do that stupid thing, it's a hazard, not a risk. And whether the bleach is in the cupboard or on a shelf or locked in an impenetrable vault, the hazard remains. Of course, as soon as someone does do something really stupid, like drink the stuff, there's a real probability of them harming themselves. The hazard is transformed into a risk. Standing on the edge of a tall building is hazardous. Stepping off the edge is a risk. A hammer sitting on a workbench is a hazard. Using it is a risk, especially if you're cack-handed. A container of gasoline is a hazard. Pouring it while holding a candle is a risk. Of course, there's more to it than this, but the bottom line is that there's always something else that's needed to change a hazard into a risk. To find out more about how hazard and risk are related, subscribe to Risk Bites, launching officially November 2012.
just understand your job to know the difference between a hazard and a risk, and to know where those transformation points occur that move it from the hazard over into the risk category as you continue to look at your business. Performance management. Key performance indicators, critical success factors. These are going to be some good things that I really want you to reach out to me after you read it and look at your organization from the standpoint of organizational KPIs, organizational critical success factors versus individual. And the individual starts with you, and it goes to your leadership and any other staff person within your company. Knowing and how you communicate expectations to them and know whether or not they're being successful, right? Starting with the vision. And so everything from the vision down, obviously, is where you see where critical success factors and key performance, down to the actions, right? Got to have the action. But before the action, we need to document what those CFS items are and the KPIs are as part of the action. So performance management, KPIs, linking activities to vision and strategy. So it gets a little technical, but these are the types of things that you need to be looking at within your organization every day. And if all you tend to do is look at what's the next project I'm going to bid, and you're not really looking at your organization and how you're going to really make your organization better, then I contend that you're going to limit yourself. You're definitely going to limit yourself. Owners, particularly fairly sophisticated owners and partners, they want to know that you're thinking about growth within your business, and not just because they see you as partners. Owners don't look at it as much as a commodity as they used to. Steve, you mentioned the word commodity. They are looking for partners. And so partner, you need to be able to communicate to them where you're going, how you got there, and everything around that. This is just some additional information about key performance indicators that I would expect that you guys are going to look at yourself, pull this out and read it and ask yourself, what am I doing? Can I do something? We have 6 months left or 7.5 months left in this year. What is it can I do to start to look at key performance indicators for my people and for my organization? I'm not saying you have to go and do some full-fledged analysis right now. Those things take time. I get that. But you should be asking yourself, what am I doing? What can I do this year to look at these things? Benchmarking. I think this is probably the last one where we were, going back to the SWOT. We talked about that a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, knowing your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and how we benchmark cost, understanding comparable advantages, learning from the best. I read one time, I guess it's sometimes when you're doing something and you're engaging in something that's not working, it doesn't appear to be very effective. How do you look at another organization similarly, and that may be doing what you want to do, but doing it well? How do you emulate what they're doing? Some of us are really afraid of going and even asking a larger firm, can you show me? You guys seem to do this really well. Is there a strategy? Is there a process? Is there a, it's nothing wrong with asking. That doesn't mean you're dumb. It just means you got the courage and the thirst, in my mind, for the knowledge to be able to improve yourself. Because you got to have the thirst, in my mind. If you don't have the thirst for the knowledge, people can see that. Another slide about benchmarking. Again, just knowing where you are, because that impacts when you put numbers together, when you're working through pre-construction activities, when you're looking at general conditions or being part of some general conditions, a larger scope, what is it that you can buy? What markup makes sense, if any? Just does it make sense for you to be part of that based on your historic experience. Measuring operations. I'm not going to read this, but it's good information about measuring and comparative with market sectors with other similar firms. Benchmarking is a search for the best industry practices that lead to more superior performance. And isn't that what we want? We want superior performance. We want to be able to say to our clients, we can complete your project less expensive and faster. Some people used to use the word cheaper. I don't use cheaper, never say that. Just less expensive and faster. Do you understand how to look at a schedule and cut time out of the schedule? Do you know how to apply the risk to that? Whether it's design, because designs have schedules too. What are your takeaways? Always get an understanding, first and foremost, right? Tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. Assessment and the analysis. Make sure you got strategies for business pursuit. Overcoming the fear factor. Know how to do that because it can control you. You don't want it to control you. Partnering. Do you need one? How do you choose the right one? Market situational awareness. Know what's around you. Know what's around you. Value-based decisions. Establish a competitive position in the market. Go through that risk assessment. Know how to deploy your resources. If you need more, how do you go get them? Do you borrow them? How do you pay for it? How do you build that into your cost? Benchmarking of historic cost and best practices only makes you better. Only makes you better. What's in that 1, 3, 5, 7-year plan? It's going to make you better, not just tomorrow or next week. What is in that 1, 3, 5, 7? Well, I never thought about that. You should be thinking about that today. In year 5, I want to be working in Dallas, right? Wherever that is. Well, not where it is, but wherever that might be. Dallas, Chicago, some amazing markets. I mean, amazing markets. Love Dallas. If I could live there, I'd live there. I just can't. KPIs, critical success factors. If you don't know where you are, if you don't measure your performance, the performance of your staff and the performance of your company, nobody else is. Nobody else knows. But you have to know. There are a couple words I just despise when I ask a question. At least when I assume you should know the answer, Right? The whole, I don't know, why not? I assumed, just those things. We all, regardless of where we work, what we do, there are certain expectations of base knowledge, technical expertise that we're expected to have and to demonstrate. Somebody mentioned about not wanting to hold hands. There's not a lot of that going on. While we all believe in the concept of capacity building, we all believe in that. What is the prerequisite as part of the capacity building? Is it at the startup level? I don't know that I believe that. I believe that you should demonstrate a certain level of business acumen, show that you've been in business for some period of time, especially when you express interest in something as complex and regulated as the healthcare industry. That may not be very politically correct, but that's true. You know what I mean? There was a young subcontractor working in Mobat, and one of his workers was on a lift, and he was near a sprinkler head. He stood up and hit it with his helmet. Flooded the whole area. They said they didn't know they were supposed to have protective cover on the head. Nor did they have a flood buggy anywhere in the area. Didn't know where the shutoff was. you're just expected to know certain things. I think this is, ooh. See how fast we got to this? See how fast we got to this? So I'm done. I appreciate you guys listening. Steve, you want to come up and continue, maybe open it up. If you guys got some issues, as far as I'm concerned, nothing's out of bounds. Because I get calls, and I know you call me and you tell me what you're unhappy about. You ask me questions, and I got to be direct many times. And those of you who know me, I'm gonna tell you, what are you doing? So when you call me, and just as a blanket statement, when you call me and you say, BJC is not doing anything for me, my first question is, when's the last time you reached out to him? Once you say I haven't, okay, then let's talk after you have, and then you come back and tell me, when I called that guy 5 times, and I went to see him, he wouldn't see me, I sent emails, I did this, and there's been no contact. Put a plan in place. I'm not saying that BJC or WashU, that they are the end all, but no, if you want an opportunity, tell yourself, I'm going to employ these particular activities for this period of time. Then I got something to measure that I don't feel like nothing has happened. But I've gone through I've executed this due diligence. So now when you come to me and you say, I really think I need to move on and look at some other opportunities, right? All that makes sense. But when you don't do that, because you have expectations, which is very clear sometimes, that because of that piece of paper says that I'm certified, that all of a sudden there's some things that's supposed to happen to me and for me that are outside of the norm. We live in the design and construction industry. It is relationship driven. It is relationship driven, and the sooner that we grasp that and understand what we should be doing to develop those relations. In Marvin's mind, everybody is my client. And I don't mean client from the standpoint of doing something for Kim and he writes me a check. I don't mean it. When I say everybody's my client, that everybody has to know that's what he does best. And I contend, when I'm sitting and having breakfast with someone, somewhere in St. Louis or Chicago or Indianapolis, somebody is saying, you know what, there's a guy I think you need to meet. Those are the people. My network is my client, and that's where we have to get our network to, because it works for us when we're sleeping. It works for us when we're eating lunch. That's what networking and building relationships is all about. Well, I'll see you in September.
Have a good summer.